Deckmasters. The original inspiration for the skill system in Duel Links, as well as being a great way to spice up your games on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. Deckmasters are, in short, cards that come straight out of your deck, appear in a zone that is not to be interacted with by any other card, and proceeds to give you a cool added effect under some rules, which we'll explain for each card. They can also special summon themselves at any time during the duel, straight to your field, and if they die, you lose immediately. This can be worked around, however, by using them as a material for a special summon. If you use Dark Magician while it's in monster form, yes, you can still use his effects, but you can also go into AMULET Dragon and have the game consider AMULET Dragon as your new Deckmaster. This also works for tributing, but I'm not sure if it really should, so keep that in mind. I decided to rank every single one of them, as a top 10 best and worst would overlap in the middle. This will be a weird one, as this is a top 17, but hey, I seem to be the only one on this platform really talking about Deckmasters, so it works. Not as much detail in my usual top 10s, mainly because every Deckmaster shares the same general idea behind it in how you play it, and the fact that they are inherent at the beginning of every single game. Intro ran a little longer than usual, but everything needed to be stated, so let's get right into talking about every single Deckmaster shown off in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. First up will be a famous monster that sadly got the short end of the stick for abilities. Blue Eyes White Dragon is a mess, and a shame given, well, it's the iconic Blue Eyes. All Blue Eyes does is if you control a fusion monster, you can attack on your first turn. Well, fusion monsters can attack on your first turn. This feels like nothing more than a screw the rules style meme of a Deckmaster ability, but only for this specific arc's format rules. Needless to say, Blue Eyes is the worst one because of the fact it's immensely situational, and its only effective role is as a beat stick, which sucks considering not even actual Blue Eyes decks use him for that purpose, given he's really just fodder for alternative and revival. Better than the real life one, as this one just kind of exists inherently, but that's every Deckmaster. The worst one is still absurd and ban-worthy. Oh wow, this is just kinda sad. Kaiba, Tristan's Deckmaster of all things is ranking higher than your Blue Eyes. Anyway, Super Robo Yaru's effect is a poor man's Battle Fader, as all it does is redirect an attack to itself by special summoning itself to the field, and then boosting itself by 1000. This brings it to a whopping 2200 that does have the potential to be 3200 by its own effect, but honestly it's not even certain. The only benefit is you can set a spell or trap after using the effect, which was the only reason Serenity and Duke even beat the scrap heap that beat Tristan. Yeah, he lost with this thing. Bada bing. Only reason we saw this effect was because Tristan used it to take a bullet for Serenity, who Nesbit even pointed out was his main target given how much she was a scrub and a young child who didn't know the game. And then Tristan set a card before dying. Poor effect, but good on Tristan for being a gentleman. I tip my fedora to you, sir. No, I can't finish that. Next up is actually one of the first Deckmasters seen, used by one of the big five, Gansley. That would be DEEPSEA Warrior, and well, something tells me Noah set up Gansley here to fail pretty fast. I mean, he was going up against the king of games after all. I think this one was just a given. You see, DEEPSEA Warrior has the power to tribute 2 monsters you control when an opponent attacks, to negate the attack, and then burn them for the attack of that monster. Okay, so you're telling me I can waste 2 monsters for a magic cylinder, or I can be smart and just run Mirror Force. The only way this Deckmaster worked was that it was the focus of Gansley's deck to swarm and tribute monsters that have effects in the graveyard. Still not much of a use, but hey, if it were the only one to exist, literally everyone would run it anyway. I love penguins. You love penguins. But as for this one, something tells me he won't be tapping those happy feet. Nightmare Penguin was the Deckmaster of Crump, and all it does as a Deckmaster is a 200 attack buff for water monsters. Yeah, that's just boring and bad. You'd be much better off playing an actual penguin deck, as at least that has Nightmare Penguins that can bounce and banish thanks to Note Penguin. What a disgrace to the legacy of penguins everywhere. This card just kinda says, start the duel with Umi, and that's literally a skill in Duel Links, so what more can I say there? Flame Swordsman is also within that department of stat buffing, but with a much weirder method. On activation it gets 18 nameless counters, and once per turn you can remove any number of counters to buff a warrior monster for 100 per counter removed. It also has a tie-in for its attack becoming how many counters were on it, but that doesn't really matter unless you plan to try and make Deckmaster Flame Swordsman.deck. In which case, I ask you rethink your life and just use the fusion. At least that one just needs instant fusion to get out, that completely fair and balanced card. Strike Ninja is, it's a unique Deckmaster in that you can discard 2 cards from your hand and then target a set spell or trap on the field to use it as if you owned the card. To say the least, it does unclog hands the brick to let you snatch an effect within some limits that I'd recommend testing on Percy first just to make sure it even functions. All KURIBOH does is be a pal and block a single instance of you taking damage. However, he pops onto the field when he does, meaning you better use it like Yami did only if you're going to lose and just need one more turn to win. Because if your life points won't drop, then you'll lose from KURIBOH dying, given, well, it's a KURIBOH for God's sake, and it's your Deckmaster. It puts you on a timer, but at least that timer is one more than what your opponent would have given you. Hey look, it's finally a top 10! Only took a couple minutes, huh? Let's look at the next Deckmaster of one of the big five, that being Machine King Duelist Nesbit. Robotic Knight has the Deckmaster ability to burn the opponent for 500 life points by discarding any number of machine-type monsters from your hand, with each one burning for 500 damage. Pretty simple effect that helps rack up the damage to the opponents. As well, Robotic Knight serves as a good example of passing on the status of Deckmaster onto another monster, because Nesbit actually ended up fusing himself with Machine King to make Perfect Machine King. You'd think this wasn't bad by the fact that the dude almost took down 3 people at once, but those 3 people were Tristan, Duke, and Serenity, so really not the hardest thing in the world to do. Overall, just a simple discard for burn effect inherent to the Deckmaster, and it has decent support to be on the field or fuse into something. You can make Psychroid your Deckmaster if you really want to. Number 9 is the last one of that 3 versus 1 duel, used by Joey's sister Serenity, because, why not? Goddess with the Third Eye has the Deckmaster ability to discard any spell card from hand and fusion summon using monsters on the field or in the hand. Effectively, every spell card becomes Polymerization, even if you have a terrible hand for fusion decks. Man, just imagine the fun Frightfurs among many other fusion decks would get from this kind of power buff. You literally don't even need to run Poly anymore because every spell is a Polymerization. Just the image makes me excited and terrified at the same time, because if that were a skill in Duel Links or Speed Duels, it would break their games. I mean, Deckmasters would break our own game inherently, so that phrase really doesn't mean much. One of the funny things about Deckmasters is that some duelists get multiple Deckmasters at different points in the arc. Kaiba was one of them, thank God, so let's see a second Deckmaster, that being Kaiser Seahorse. Kaiser Seahorse has a bit more passive an effect to make light monsters you own require 1 less tribute to summon. Effectively, your side of the field has a light monster gear town without the need to sabotage, and lets you bring out any level 5 or 6 for free and level 7 and higher as if they were level 5s and 6s. Combine this with cards that can hit the levels of monsters in hand, like Cost Down, and that's more free normal summons of strong monsters. Examples that would benefit from this include Cosmo Sliprider for a normal summon MST that floats into one of your Cosmos, Batteryman Charger for all your electric OTK needs, and finally, Karazhan Majesty's Lord, for all you Domain Monarch scum out there. Now you don't even need to waste Idea and Eidos on those guys. It legit has so many uses. This card is about as balanced as Deckmasters get, in the way of it's not pretty bad compared to the rest of them, and also it's not run in every single deck. Funny to see a Deckmaster that wasn't even used on the show this high up on the list, but here it is. The dude used in this show's explanation of what Deckmasters are, Total Defense Shogun, has the power to pay 1,000 life points when the opponent attacks and destroy the monster who attacked. In general, this monster has a pretty strong ability as a Deckmaster, as it's just a Sakuretsu armor whenever you want, making yourself being attacked a potential negative on the opponent. This is kind of a big deal, negating an entire aspect of the game inherently, and for a pretty long period of time. You can do this 7 times at max. However, we got a monster with a stronger form of this coming up, so there's not much to talk about with him. Sorry, buddy, you just got outclassed. Granted, you outclassed DEEPSEA Warrior, so, I mean, that's something, I guess. Sometimes I enjoy how Jinzo grew to be something so major in the series, given he's a poster monster for various antagonists in Yu-Gi-Oh!, including, well, himself. Jinzo was already a powerful monster, especially in GOAT format and Duel Links, so making it a Deckmaster gives it even more power, and was a good idea by Lictor in the end, because lord is this powerful! Should the opponent use a trap card for any means, you can negate the effects of all face-up trap cards on the opponent's field, and then destroy them, with the only downside that it can only be used once every 2 turns. Jinzo's effectively a great counter against everything that needs traps to function or trap counters, like Impermanence, for example. Hell, it even has strong use for facing Altergeist, though that matchup may be a bit more off-putting depending on the setup. And that's not even mentioning how you can pop Jinzo out to the field, use the Jinzo support with it, make Jinzo Lord your Deckmaster, anything you want. All just to make traps a terrible thing to run. And Jinzo a meta staple once again. No Solemn for you. Lord of D is a powerful dragon support Deckmaster that legit has power behind it, as well as serves as the final Deckmaster that Kaiba had. Once per turn, you can pay 500 life points to normal summon a dragon type monster from your hand, in addition to the normal summon you get. What's the first dragon-related thing to pop into your head? No, not dragon rulers. For me, it's guard dragons. We all know the frightening power of these dragon spam link boys, and we all remember when Seraphonite was around because of the Brilliant engine. Now imagine if you didn't need to run Garnets and it's just on the field inherently. Guard dragons wouldn't even be the only strong thing getting buffed. Dragonides, Heretics, literally anything with a dragon, any deck can use it. And that's just so powerful in so many decks, he had to crack the top 10. This one was mentioned in the top 10 weirdest cards. Thank you for the poll results, by the way. So welcome back, Dark Magician Girl. DMG was used by Taya against Crump, and it's a shame such a powerful deckmaster went to Taya, of all people. To recap from that video, you can excavate cards from the top of your deck based on how many monsters you have in the graveyard, and just, add one of them to your hand. With just how much decks love to mill and set up the graveyard for their summons, you know something like this would make them cream themselves. Just add a monster, whatever, you basically see your whole deck anyway. Glad Grass is banned. Yikes. Why does one of the strongest deckmasters belong to a dude named Johnson? The guy's a judge that sounds like a lawyer firm and generally just makes me feel like I'm going to be arrested for something I didn't know was illegal and isn't illegal, but he sways the jury anyway into his favor, so I have to do 10 to life for absolutely nothing. Either way, number 3 is Judge Man, and to those scratching your head, wait till you get a load of this effect. Like Jinzo, you can only use this effect once per 2 turns, with added cost of paying 1,000 life points. However, this is no mere trap negation. With Judge Man, you can Raigeki your opponent's board and burn them for 500 per destroyed monster. This just straight up kills most decks, as we could see when Volcanics got this card with an actual cost and setup to it. They got one card that allows you to Raigeki in the opponent's turn, and who would have guessed that a bad GX archetype would become meta for a little while, and also incredibly fun in C-play with Shadalls. Now that this has very little cost and goes into everything, well, imagine the meta just being this, and then the top 2. As we near the final 2, the power scale is just horribly unbalanced. And I'm saying that immediately after talking about Judge Man. Dark Magician was the true deckmaster of Yami, and oh yeah, you know it's good. Whenever you activate a spell, you can pay 1,000 to use that spell's effect again. So you play Pot of Greed, pay 1,000, it's now another Pot of Greed. You could use 2 Rotas and go plus off of it. 2 Monster Reborns to go even more plus. 2 Card Destructions for empty jar things. Just wow! It's not even the first spell per turn. It's anything you want, so screw strategy, and just say your deck with any amount of spells above 0 is now broken inherently. Not to mention, this is probably the easiest deckmaster to turn into another deckmaster with all of the fusions and support if you ever want it to hit the field. This sort of effect needs crazy restrictions, not just an inherent, you get to do this at any time clause. Will the biblical reference himself please stand up to accept your award, because good lord, Noah, you little cheat for having the best deckmaster. Best deckmasters. Yeah, this would have been a top 18, but I wasn't splitting these apart. Shinato's Arc was the first deckmaster used by this half pint, and if you've seen his duels in the Cross Anime Tournament, then you know our pain. To sum up, we did not give him deckmaster abilities in the winner's bracket. When he went down to loser's bracket, we wanted to make it representative of his actual deck, so we allowed him to use a deckmaster and his opponent to use any deckmaster that they chose. Noah still made it into the top 16, and his deck is garbage with like 4 broken cards, and one of them is this! To start, you can soul charge either player's graveyard if the opponent attacks, and summon 1 for every attack mode monster they have. This alone is a nightmare, as no one can touch you if there's anything in the graveyard whatsoever. Oh, you want to solemn the summon? Sure, I get them all back on the next attack anyway. On top of that, even if you do take damage for some ungodly reason, you can banish all monsters in the graveyards to gain back life points for each by 500. And we haven't even gotten to Shinato himself. When you summon it to the field, you can remove the Arc from play entirely to summon Shinato, King of a Higher Plane. And Shinato is one hell of a boss monster. While on the field, you can gain life points by whatever the opponent loses, combined with halving the life points of the opponent when it destroys a monster. You usually just want to use the Arc instead, but this is a really good way to actually end the game when you need to. Graveyard Disruption, Battle Negation, Monster Reborns at will, the fact that the Arc's effects are still allowed while you have the King of a Higher Plane on the field. Sometimes, I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro is kinda buggy sometimes, but that happens. Needless to say, this is the power of a true god.
Sorry, I can't be your man. I'm sorry, she a fucking fan. I get bread, all these